Namaskar and welcome to GlobalScan. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. This is your one-stop destination for a roundup of all major global developments of the week. In a tragic incident, India's Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, was killed in a helicopter crash. Condolences have been pouring in for him from across the world. Earlier this week, Russian President Vladimir Putin visited India to participate in the annual summit with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Besides, Ukraine continues to be center of global security concern, and Germany gets new leadership with new Chancellor Olaf Scholz. All that and more in GlobalScan. Let's get started with the top stories. Nations bid adieu to Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat. Last rites performed with full military honours at Brass Square in New Delhi. Hundreds gathered to pay last respects to CDS. He died in Kannur helicopter crash. US President Joe Biden hosts world leaders and civil society members from over 100 countries virtually in the Summit for Democracy. President Biden calls for democracies to come together as autocrats are seeking to expand their influence and to justify repressive policies. Prime Minister Modi emphasizes the need for democratic countries to deliver on values enshrined in their constitution. Olaf Scholz replaces Angela Merkel as the new Chancellor of Germany. Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulates Chancellor Scholz, says he looks forward to working closely to further strengthen strategic partnership between India and Germany. WHO urges speeding up vaccinations as several Western nations see fresh surges in COVID cases. Omicron forces UK to reassess measures. PM Johnson brings in tougher restrictions. Pfizer-BioNTech claim booster shot of their vaccine can give effective protection against the latest variant. Canada joins UK, US and Australia's diplomatic boycott of Beijing Winter Olympics. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson also tells Parliament that Britain will effectively be boycotting the global 2022 sporting event. IOC's Thomas Bach says Olympics is about athletes, not politics. BCCI announces India's test squad for the upcoming tour to South Africa. Meanwhile, Rohit Sharma replaces Virat Kohli as India's ODI captain to take over from South Africa series starting next month. Let's begin with news from Asia. India's Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat, his wife and 11 other officers were killed in a horrific chopper crash in Tamil Nadu on Wednesday. Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh briefed both the Houses of Parliament on the tragedy. General Rawat has had an illustrious career in the Defence Forces, rising up to the ranks to become India's first Chief of Defence Staff. Tributes have been pouring in from all over the world for General Bipin Rawat.
Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat is no more. The helicopter he was on board crashed at Kannur in Tamil Nadu. His wife, MADHULIKA Rawat, died in the accident as well. The helicopter had taken off from the Sulur Air Base on its way to Wellington in Coimbatore. The helicopter took off at about 11:50 am. There were 14 people on board the chopper, including General Rawat, his wife and 4 members of the crew. Contact was lost with the chopper at about 12:22 p.m. It crashed 10 kilometers away from the Defence Services College at Wellington in a remote area of Kannur. 13 passengers on the chopper are dead. The Indian Air Force announced the tragic news after 6 p.m. in a tweet. It read, "With deep regret, it has now been ascertained that General Bipin Rawat, Mrs. Madhulika Rawat and 11 other persons on board have died in the unfortunate accident." Locals claim to have heard a loud noise and seen a ball of fire in the sky. The injured passengers were rushed to a nearby hospital. The bodies were sent to a military hospital in Wellington, where a DNA test was performed to confirm the identity of the deceased. The Indian Air Force said on Twitter that inquiry has been ordered into the incident. An IAF Mi-17V5 helicopter with CDS General Bipin Rawat on board met with an accident today near Kannur, Tamil Nadu. An inquiry has been ordered to ascertain the cause of the accident. Bureau Report, DD India.
Nations across the globe have condoled the loss of CDS General Bipin Rawat. Former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in his condolence message, said, "I was deeply saddened to learn about the deadly helicopter crash that killed India's Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, his wife and 11 others in Tamil Nadu. My thoughts and prayers are with the families of the victims. May they rest in peace." Russian ambassador to India Nikolai Kudashev said that Russia has lost a very close friend who played a big role in promotion of our bilateral, special and privileged strategic partnership. Grieving together with India. Goodbye, friend. Farewell, Commander. And US Embassy in India, in a statement, condoled the passing away of Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat. Said, as India's first Chief of Defence Staff, General Rawat spearheaded a historic period of transformation in the Indian military. He was a strong friend, partner of the United States, overseeing a major expansion of India's defence cooperation with the US military. An ambassador of France to India, Emmanuel Nenen, expressed deep anguish over the death of CDS. He wrote, "Deeply saddened by the tragic demise of Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat, his wife and several defence officials in a crash. My heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families and the Indian Armed Forces. We will remember CDS Rawat as a great military leader and a supporter of flag of France, flag of India's defence ties." And Prime Minister of Bhutan, Lotte Tshering, expressed heartfelt condolences. Heartaching to learn of the helicopter crash in India, claiming 13 precious lives, including Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat and his wife. People of Bhutan and I offer prayers for India and the bereaved families. May you find strength to see through the tragedy. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosted Russian President Vladimir Putin for the 21st Annual India-Russia Summit. This was President Putin's second foreign visit to the last 2 years since the COVID pandemic began. In the opening statements, both leaders reiterated their commitment to further strengthening ties amidst the fast-changing geopolitical equations.
An in-person meeting after November 2019. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosted President Vladimir Putin for the 21st India-Russia Summit at Hyderabad House. What makes this summit even more significant is the fact that the first ever 2+2 dialogue between India and Russia was held just a few hours before the two leaders met.
आज हमारे विदेश एवं रक्षा मंत्रियों के बीच 2+2 डायलॉग की पहली बैठक हुई। इससे हमारे व्यवहारिक सहयोग को बढ़ाने का एक नया मैकेनिज्म शुरू हुआ है।
Prime Minister said that the fact that President Putin's India visit was the second one in the last 2 years illustrates Vladimir Putin's closeness and personal commitment towards boosting India-Russia ties. Ties between both nations have only grown stronger over the last 2 years, be it in the field of vaccine research, humanitarian assistance, or in assisting repatriation of citizens during the lockdown. The two nations' close cooperation has been a hallmark of ties. Prime Minister Modi described 2021 as a landmark year for India-Russia ties.
वर्ष 2021 हमारे द्विपक्षीय संबंधों के लिए कई मायनों में महत्वपूर्ण है। इस वर्ष 1971 की ट्रीटी ऑफ पीस, फ्रेंडशिप एंड कोऑपरेशन के 5 दशक और हमारी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप के 2 दशक पूरे हो रहे हैं। अफगानिस्तान और दूसरे क्षेत्रीय विषयों पर भी हम निरंतर संपर्क में रहे हैं।
India-Russia ties have been a constant factor among the variables in the geopolitical and international arena in recent times.
पिछले कई दशकों में वैश्विक स्तर पर कई फंडामेंटल बदलाव आए, कई तरह के जियोपॉलिटिकल समीकरण उभरे, किंतु इन सभी वेरिएबल्स के बीच भारत-रूस मित्रता एक कांस्टेंट रही है। दोनों देशों ने न सिर्फ एक दूसरे के साथ निसंकोच सहयोग किया है, एक दूसरे की सेंसिटिविटीज का भी विशेष ख्याल रखा है। यह सचमुच इंटर स्टेट दोस्ती का एक यूनिक और विश्वस्त मॉडल है।
President Vladimir Putin described India as a time-tested friend. He expressed his concern over the situation in Afghanistan. Building on the foundations laid at the Eastern Economic Forum in 2019, both nations have set a target of $30 billion worth of trade and doubling investment to $50 billion by 2025. Cooperation in co-development and co-production under Make in India have also seen a boost. Cooperation in defense, space and nuclear sectors is on the rise.
We perceive India as a great power, a friendly nation, and a time-tested friend. We are truly cooperating and working on very important and promising matters. That applies to the energy sector and high-tech, including space. And I think that the programs that we will be discussing here today will be implemented fully, including the training of Indian spacemen cosmonauts. We also cooperate greatly in military and technical sphere, like with no other country. We continue to cooperate jointly on global agenda, and as you have said, indeed, our positions are quite similar or coincide. Naturally, we are concerned about everything that has to do with terrorism. I mean, the fight against terrorism, also fighting drug trafficking and organized crime. And with that regard, naturally, we are concerned about the developments of the situation in Afghanistan.
Judging by the outcomes of the 2+2 meet, as well as the opening statements the two leaders made, the import of the first in-person meeting, albeit only for a few hours, between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Vladimir Putin is immense. With Amritpal Singh and Meghna Dev, Bureau Report, DD India.
India and Russia inked 28 agreements and a memorandum of understanding, including the pact to manufacture AK-203 rifles in India. The agreements were signed after high-level meetings between Indian and Russian defense and foreign ministers, capped by a summit meeting between the visiting Russian President Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday. The annual India-Russia summit took place after a gap of a year due to the pandemic.
The short but substantive visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin to New Delhi on Monday saw him and Prime Minister Narendra Modi hold the 21st India-Russia Annual Summit meeting to discuss the entire gamut of Indo-Russia relations, including regional and global issues. The meeting saw the signing of 28 agreements across sectors from defense to energy to space exploration, science and technology, heavy engineering to trade and investment. 9 of the agreements were government-to-government pacts, while 19 others were commercial agreements in an array of sectors.
A record number of 28 agreements or MOUs were concluded during this visit. These agreements were both government-to-government as well as business-to-business, including involving our public sector units in both countries. The agreements cover a very wide range of sectors, including trade, energy, culture, intellectual property, accountancy, cyber attacks in the banking sector, manpower, geological exploration, survey, education, etc. India and Russia have also signed a program of cooperation in the field of defense for the next 10 years, 2021 to 2031.
Among the deals, the two sides agreed to extend the agreement on program of the military technical cooperation from 2021 to 2031. The long-awaited AK-203 assault rifles deal was inked at the end of bilateral talks between Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and his Russian counterpart Sergei Shoigu, paving the way for the production of over 6 lakh rifles in Amethi in Uttar Pradesh. The other agreements signed include Roadmap for Science, Technology and Innovation Cooperation, Memorandum of Cooperation in the field of intellectual property, MOU for cooperation in earth sciences and geological study of subsoil and cooperation in geological onshore and offshore exploration works, technology protection due to cooperation in research and use of outer space for peaceful purposes and building and operation of launch vehicles and ground-based space infrastructure, Memorandum of Cooperation in research, technological and strategic work in metallurgical technologies, cooperation in fields of trade, cybersecurity, culture, education, students exchange, academic research, oil and gas, power, sports, merchant shipping, blue economy, manpower supplies and consular affairs. Prime Minister Modi also discussed the issue of long-term sourcing of fertilizers and coking coal by flagging Indian interest in supply of skilled manpower and petroleum projects with the Russian president. Russia showed interest in investing under the production-linked scheme in 13 sectors, including shipbuilding and organic fertilizers. The two sides also discussed enhanced sourcing of Russian crude oil on long-term contracts, strengthening LNG imports to India, and the possible utilization of the Northern Sea route for energy supplies. The joint statement issued after the meeting welcomed the signing of a new long-term defence program, mentioning the need to upgrade defence cooperation in keeping with the Indian requirement of co-development and production of defence systems under Make in India. With Amritpal Singh in New Delhi, DD India.
Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla's two-day visit to Bangladesh concluded with his courtesy call on Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in Dhaka. The Foreign Secretary conveyed greetings of Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the 50th anniversary of Maitri Divas and noted its successful joint celebrations in 16 countries in addition to Dhaka and Delhi. He also discussed the forthcoming visit of President Ramnath Kovind to Bangladesh on the occasion of 50 years of Victory Day and Liberation of Bangladesh celebrations. Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh Vikram Doraiswamy and Policy Advisor in the Ministry of External Affairs Ashok Malik from the Indian side and Principal Secretary Dr. Ahmed Kaikos from Bangladesh side also attended the meeting. Earlier, Foreign Secretary Shringla called on Foreign Minister Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen. He also held a meeting with his Bangladeshi counterpart Masood bin Momen on Tuesday. Addressing media persons after the meeting, Foreign Secretary Shringla said that increasing connectivity with Bangladesh was among the top priorities of India. Both the Foreign Secretaries reviewed the progress of the entire gamut of bilateral cooperation, including trade and investment, border management, connectivity, water resource management, power, energy and cooperation in the health sector, especially in the COVID pandemic times. India's central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, on Wednesday announced its bi-monthly monetary policy statement. RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das said key rates remain unchanged, the repo rate remains at 4% and the stance remains accommodative. It's the 9th consecutive time the rate has remained unchanged.
On an assessment of the macroeconomic situation and outlook, the MPC voted unanimously to maintain the status quo with regard to the policy repo rate and by a majority of 5:1 to retain the accommodative policy stance. Consequently, the policy repo rate remains unchanged at 4% and the stance remains accommodative as long as necessary to revive and sustain growth on a durable basis and continue to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the economy while ensuring that inflation remains within the target going forward. The marginal standing facility, that is MSF rate, and the bank rate remain unchanged at 4.25%. The reverse repo rate also remains unchanged at 3.35%.
The reverse repo rate also remained unchanged at 3.35%. Marginal standing facility rate and bank rate have been kept at 4.25%. RBI Governor said several sectors of the economy are bouncing back to the pre-COVID levels.
In several sectors of the economy, pre-pandemic levels of output have been crossed. Inflation is broadly aligned with the target of 4%. Barring, of course, short-lived spikes. External financing requirements are very modest and strong buffers should withstand any global spillovers. Public finances have been strengthened by buoyant tax revenues. The central and state governments and the Reserve Bank of India have mobilized policy actions on an unprecedented scale and scope to bring about this outcome.
And RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das also spoke on the GDP status.
The NSO's release on 30th November confirmed that the recovery of Indian economy is gaining traction, with real GDP growth at 8.4% year-on-year for Q2 21-22 and subsequent to 20.1% in the preceding quarter, that is in Q1 of this year. All components of GDP registered year-on-year growth, with exports and imports strongly surpassing their pre-COVID levels.
And amidst the prevailing concerns about the Omicron variant, studies show that mixing of doses of different vaccine is likely to provide better immunity against coronavirus. That and more in a roundup of all pandemic-related developments from across the world.
As per WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the variant's global spread suggests it could have a major impact on the COVID-19 pandemic, and the time to contain it is now before more Omicron patients are hospitalized. The WHO also said it would publish a review of its stance on booster doses within days, but that with vaccination rates still worryingly low in much of the developing world, administering primary doses rather than boosters remained its priority.
Even though we still need answers to some crucial questions, we're not defenseless against Omicron or Delta. The steps countries take today and in the coming days and weeks will determine how Omicron unfolds. If countries wait until their hospitals start to fill up, it's too late. Don't wait. Act now. We're running out of ways to say this, but we will keep saying it.
Pfizer and BioNTech have said a booster jab of their coronavirus vaccine promises to be an effective defense against the new Omicron variant. 3 doses provide a similar level of antibodies against Omicron to that of 2 doses against other variants, the company said after a small study. The World Health Organization earlier said vaccines should still work against severe Omicron cases. Researchers across the world are piecing together data about Omicron. In a statement on Wednesday, Pfizer Chief Executive Albert Bourla said protection against the variant would be improved with a 3rd dose of the jab. However, Pfizer and BioNTech noted that the results are preliminary and said that they would continue to collect data and evaluate real-world effectiveness. Brazil's authorities will not implement a COVID passport as proof of vaccination, a decision already aggravating both Brazilian people and experts. Infectious disease specialist Roberto Medrohono said it was incredible that the government refused to enact a measure that keeps travelers and residents safe. Medrohono added that those without COVID-19 vaccines to avoid visiting other countries as they pose a risk of infection for themselves and others. British researchers on Wednesday started recruitment for a clinical trial to test antiviral COVID-19 treatments for use in people early on in the disease who are at higher risks of complications, starting with Merck's Molnupiravir. Britain became the first country in the world to approve Molnupiravir, which was jointly developed by US-based Merck & Company Inc. and Ridgeback Biotherapeutics in November. Britain's Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency recommended the antiviral pill for use in people with mild to moderate COVID-19 and at least one risk factor for developing severe illness such as obesity, older age diabetes, and heart disease. The Norwegian government introduced stricter rules on Tuesday to limit the spread of COVID-19, including a cap on the number of visitors in private homes. The Nordic country has seen a surge of COVID-19 infections in recent weeks, followed by a rise in the number of hospitalizations. Poland has announced new measures designed to curb the spread of coronavirus, with capacity limits lowered in public spaces and remote schooling introduced. Deputy Health Minister Waldemar Kraska said on Tuesday that from December 15th, the limit on the number of people allowed in public spaces, such as restaurants and cinemas, would be lowered to 30%, not including vaccinated people, from the current 50%. South Korea's new daily COVID-19 cases rose above 7,000 for the first time, Korean Prime Minister Kim Bo-kyum said on Wednesday, putting hospital capacity under strain as deaths and severe cases rise. Infections in South Korea have skyrocketed this month after the government began to ease restrictions under a so-called Living with COVID-19 scheme in November. Up to 1 million COVID-19 vaccines are estimated to have expired in Nigeria last month without being used. This is one of the biggest single losses of doses that shows the difficulty African nations have in getting shots in arms. Governments in the African continent of over 1 billion people have been pushing for more vaccine deliveries as inoculation rates lag richer regions, increasing the risk of new variants such as the Omicron coronavirus now spreading across South Africa. GlobalScan Desk, DD India.
Let's now take a look at news from the Americas. US President Joe Biden has convened a summit of over 100 countries spanning the whole world to discuss the decline of global democracy. In his opening remarks, he said democracy is inherently resilient and capable of solving most difficult problems through deliberations and consensus. He said democracies need to stand together to shape a shared future. The summit is largely closed door. Prime Minister Modi participated in the summit.
The Summit for Democracy brings together leaders from government, civil society and private sector from over 100 countries to build an affirmative agenda and strengthen democratic institutions, which seem to be under threat from those who believe that democracy as a form of government is in decline.
By outside pressure from autocrats, they seek to advance their own power, export and expand their influence around the world, and justify repressive policies and practices as a more efficient way to address today's challenges. That's how it's sold.
US President Joe Biden made the opening remarks at the virtual summit, which is largely closed door. He defended democracy as being inherently resilient, capable of self-correction and self-improvement.
When people and parties that might have opposing views sit down and find ways to work together, things begin to work. But it's the best way to unleash human potential and defend human dignity and solve big problems. And it's up to us to prove that.
The grand design of the summit is to rework the course of democratic renewal, to defend the rule of the people. Biden reminded the leaders present that choices democratic countries make will shape their shared future for generations.
Democracies are not all the same. We don't agree on everything, all of us in this meeting today. But the choices we make together are going to define, in my view, the course of our shared future for generations to come. And as a global community for democracy, we have to stand up for the values that unite us. We have to stand for justice and the rule of law, for free speech, free assembly, a free press, freedom of religion, and for all the inherent human rights of every individual.
Biden said the US is willing to fund the protection of democratic best practices, rule of law, anti-corruption, and most importantly, freedom of the press. As a special gesture, PM Modi was invited to participate in the main leaders' plenary session hosted by President Biden. This closed-door session saw intervention from 12 select countries, including India. In his remarks, Prime Minister Modi recalled that exactly on this day, 75 years ago, India's Constituent Assembly had held its first session. He highlighted India's civilization ethos as one of the original sources of democracy. PM Modi said that the democratic spirit, including respect for rule of law and pluralistic ethos, is ingrained in Indians. The Indian diaspora carries it too, thereby contributing to economic well-being and social harmony of their adopted homes. Prime Minister Modi emphasized the need for democratic countries to deliver on values enshrined in their constitutions.
A free and independent media. It's the bedrock of democracy. It's how publics stay informed and how governments are held accountable. And around the world, press freedom is under threat. So we're committing critical seed money to launch a new multilateral effort of our International Fund for Public Interest Media to sustain independent media around the world. And through our USAID, we're going to be standing up a new defamation defense fund for journalists to help protect investigative journalists against nuisance lawsuits designed to prevent them from doing their work, their vital work, around the world.
Among the countries participating, 39 are from Europe, 27 from the Western Hemisphere, 21 from the Asia-Pacific and 17 from Sub-Saharan Africa. South Asia has India, Maldives and Nepal. Bureau Report, DD India.
US President Joe Biden and Russia's President Vladimir Putin squared off in a video call on Tuesday as Washington, D.C. put Moscow on notice. Biden told Putin in their 2-hour-long video conference that an invasion of Ukraine would bring enormous harm to the Russian economy. The highly anticipated call between the two leaders came amid growing worries by the US and its European allies about Russia's threat to Ukraine.
US President Joe Biden warned Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday that the West would impose strong economic and other measures on Russia if it invades Ukraine, while Putin demanded guarantees that NATO would not expand further eastward. The two leaders held 2 hours of virtual talks on Ukraine and other disputes in a video call about US-Russian relations, which have sunk to their lowest point since the end of the Cold War more than 3 decades ago, as Russia masses thousands of troops on Ukraine's border. The measures included economic sanctions and other actions such as additional troop deployments to NATO allies in the region and other defense material for Ukraine.
President Biden was direct and straightforward with President Putin, as he always is. He reiterated America's support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He told President Putin directly that if Russia further invades Ukraine, the United States and our European allies would respond with strong economic measures. We would provide additional defensive materiel to the Ukrainians above and beyond that which we are already providing. And we would fortify our NATO allies on the eastern flank with additional capabilities in response to such an escalation. He also told President Putin there's another option: de-escalation and diplomacy. The United States and our European allies would engage in a discussion that covers larger strategic issues, including our strategic concerns with Russia and Russia's strategic concerns.
The Kremlin said on Tuesday it expected no immediate breakthroughs in strained US-Russia relations after President Vladimir Putin held virtual talks with Joe Biden, but said the two leaders would keep engaging on practical matters.
There are no breakthroughs yet. Relationships are of concern. I think that they do not satisfy either us or the Americans. Actually, the presidents talked about it. It is hard to expect rapid breakthroughs, but at the same time, the presidents showed an attitude to continue practical work, and in particular, to start the discussion of very sensitive issues that I mentioned and that seriously concern, in particular, Moscow.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration is in intensive consultations with the new German government over its response if Russia invades Ukraine, and believes Germany would be ready to take significant action if Russia launches an attack. Under Secretary of State for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland, in testimony to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, made the comment in response to a question about the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline to Germany. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that the fact that gas was not yet flowing through Nord Stream 2 created a leverage for the West over Putin.
When it comes to Nord Stream 2, the fact is the gas is not currently flowing through the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which means that it's not operating, which means that it's not leverage for Putin. Indeed, it is a leverage for the West, because if Vladimir Putin wants to see gas flow through that pipeline, he may not want to take the risk of invading Ukraine.
Sullivan said that an attack on Ukraine would also prompt calls from NATO's Eastern European members for increased US military commitments, and the White House would respond positively to those things. Biden talked with the leaders of Britain, France, Germany, and Italy after he finished with Putin. They underscored their support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as the need for Russia to reduce tensions. Bureau Report, DD India.
And now let's get the news from Europe. The Angela Merkel era in Germany is over. President Frank-Walter Steinmeier has officially appointed Olaf Scholz as the new German federal chancellor. Scholz promises continuity with the change, saying that he'll make the country greener and fairer, along with never-before traffic light coalition. Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated the new German leader, saying that he looks forward to working with him.
Im Namen der Bundesrepublik Deutschland In the name of the Republic of Germany, I appoint Olaf Scholz as German Chancellor. Mr. Chancellor, congratulations.
With this, an era came to an end in Germany and a new chapter began in Europe's largest democracy. Olaf Scholz has been sworn in as Germany's next Chancellor by Parliament. On Wednesday, he formally took power after Angela Merkel's historic 16 years as leader. Scholz, 63, who served as Vice Chancellor and Finance Minister in coalition with Merkel, got a clear majority of 395 votes from lawmakers in the Bundestag, lower house of Parliament. Wednesday's ceremony in the Bundestag ended 16 years of conservative rule under Merkel and paved the way for a pro-European coalition government that has promised to boost green investment.
Mr. Olaf Scholz has achieved the necessary majority of at least 369 votes. Based on Article 63, Paragraph 2 of the German Constitution, he is elected Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany.
Scholz, wearing a black face mask, waved as he received a standing ovation from lawmakers and was given bouquets of flowers from leaders of parliamentary groups. Sticking to democratic procedures enshrined in Germany's constitution, Scholz was formally nominated by President Frank-Walter Steinmeier in the nearby Bellevue Palace before returning to Parliament to take oath of office in front of lawmakers.
Herzlichen Glückwunsch. Congratulations, esteemed Mr. Chancellor, dear Olaf Scholz. I know from personal experience that it is a moving moment to be elected to this post. You might have guessed that it's an exciting and also fulfilling job, a demanding one too. But when you take it on with joy, it's maybe also one of the most beautiful jobs that exist, to take on the responsibility for this country. From the bottom of my heart, I wish you the best of luck in this position and always a lucky hand for our country.
Und immer eine glückliche Hand.
Scholz is an experienced negotiator and veteran politician who, as Social Democratic Party General Secretary from 2002 to 2004, defended controversial labour market reforms and social welfare cuts under the former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder. As Labour Minister from 2007 to 2009 in Merkel's first ruling coalition, Scholz pushed for a generous short-time work scheme that helped protect millions of workers from the fallout of the global financial crisis. After being mayor of Hamburg from 2011 to 2018, Scholz returned to Berlin as Merkel's finance minister, a role in which he got rid of the goal of balanced budgets and enabled record new borrowing to shield companies and employees from the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. On the European level, he worked closely with France and persuaded Merkel to support a debt-financed European Recovery Fund worth 800 billion euros or $900 billion to help EU member states hit hardest by COVID-19. GlobalScan Desk, DD India.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been telling the British people to mask up, get vaccinated and follow all kinds of restrictions to keep themselves safe ever since the COVID pandemic broke out. But the surfacing of December 2020 video, which showed one of his advisors joking about a party at 10 Downing Street when such get-togethers were locked down, has raised a storm. The advisor has now resigned, but is that going to have an effect of storm clouds passing over? Here's more.
Allegra Stratton, an advisor to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, resigned Wednesday following backlash over a video. This video recently surfaced from December 2020. The video shows her laughing and joking about a party in Downing Street during a Christmas COVID-19 lockdown last year when such festivities were banned.
The British people have made immense sacrifices in the ongoing battle against COVID-19. I now fear that my comments in the leaked video of the 20th of December last year have become a distraction in that fight.
In the video, Stratton was shown at a rehearsal for a daily briefing, laughing and joking about a reported gathering at a time when tens of thousands of people across Britain were banned from meeting family and friends to celebrate Christmas or even from bidding farewell to dying relatives.
My remarks seemed to make light of the rules that people were doing everything to obey. That was never my intention. I will regret those remarks for the rest of my days, and I offer my profound apologies to all of you at home for them. Working in government is an immense privilege. I tried to do right by you all, to behave with civility and decency, and act to the high standards you expect of number 10. Rightly expect of number 10. I understand the anger and frustration that people feel. To all of you who lost loved ones, who endured intolerable loneliness, and who struggled with your businesses, I am truly sorry, and this afternoon I I'm offering my resignation to the Prime Minister. Thanks for your time.
Allegra Stratton, who was most recently Johnson's COP26 spokeswoman, was his press secretary at the time. The video was recorded in December 2020, addressing the weekly Prime Minister's questions session at the House of Commons. Johnson started off with an apology and announced an internal inquiry by his cabinet secretary to establish the full facts around the leaked video. He, however, maintained that no party actually took place that would have been in breach of the lockdown rules at the time. With Bureau Inputs, GlobalScan Desk, DD India.
Let's now track some more news and developments in fast-forward mode.
NASA on December 9 set out to explore some of the universe's deepest mysteries when it launched its Imaging X-ray Polarimetry Explorer, or IXPE, on SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket. IXPE is going to explore some of the most extreme and mysterious objects in the universe, including black holes and pulsars and the X-rays they emit, according to NASA. IXPE is a space observatory that carries 3 state-of-the-art space telescopes with special polarization-sensitive detectors. The Democratic-controlled U.S. Senate on Wednesday approved a Republican measure that would overturn President Joe Biden's COVID-19 vaccine or test mandate for private businesses, with 2 Democrats joining Republicans to back the initiative. The 50-48 vote sends the legislation to the Democratic-led House of Representatives, where it faces strong headwinds, while Biden has threatened to veto it. The legislation would overturn administration rules ordering businesses with 100 workers or more to require vaccinations or coronavirus testing for millions of employees. The measure was not subject to Senate rules that require 60 of its 100 members to agree on most legislation, meaning it could pass with just a 51-vote simple majority. 2 Senate Democrats, Joe Manchin of West Virginia and John Tester of Montana, joined 50 Republicans in voting for the bill. The head of Instagram said on Wednesday he aims to launch next year a version of the app with a chronological feed rather than one ranked algorithmically, in his first appearance before Congress, where he was grilled about children's safety online. Instagram's Adam Mosseri was the latest tech executive pressed by lawmakers to provide more transparency into their platform's algorithms and the impact of the content they curate and recommend for users. Instagram and its parent company Meta Platforms Incorporation, formerly Facebook, have come under intense scrutiny over the potential impact of their services on the mental health, body image and safety of young users, including after whistleblower Frances Haugen leaked internal documents about the company's approach to younger users. With Nobel ceremonies in Stockholm cancelled due to the pandemic for the 2nd year in a row, the medicine and economics laureates received their prizes during a ceremony in Southern California on Wednesday. The Nobel Prize for Medicine was handed out to American scientist David Julius and Artem Pathiputian for the discovery of receptors in the skin that sense temperature and touch and could pave the way for new painkillers. The Nobel Prize for Economics went to economists David Card, Guido Imbens for pioneering natural experiments to show real-world economic impacts in areas from minimum wage increases in the US fast food sector to migration from Castro-era Cuba. A powerful storm system battered the United Kingdom, Ireland and parts of Spain with strong winds that knocked out power to thousands and dumped heavy rain and snow in some areas. Storm Bara, as named by meteorological agencies in Europe, underwent bombogenesis as in an intensified storm as it closed in on the Irish coastline. It triggered flooding and power outages that forced schools to close, and several school districts will remain closed into Wednesday. Storm Bara brought heavy snowfall, showers and storms in northern Spain on Wednesday, with authorities urging drivers to be cautious as they return home after a long holiday weekend. TV footage showed heavy snowfall in the Pyrenees Mountains in the region of Aragon, where road signs warned of avalanche risks. Spain's weather agency, AMIT, said it didn't expect the weather to settle until the weekend. GlobalScan Desk, DD India.
Some stories now from a more intimate world around us, stories beyond headlines.
Monarch butterflies have descended on their sanctuary in the central Mexican state of Michoacan, an animal spectacle that draws tourists, scientists and locals alike. The monarch butterflies flee the cold winters of Canada and northern United States and travel thousands of kilometers to hibernate and reproduce in the temperate woods of central Mexico. Hundreds of trees crowded with butterflies can be seen along Mexico's 13,000-hectare monarch reserve after a 2,000-mile journey. However, experts warn of a drop in monarch numbers. According to conservationist group WWF, the butterflies occupied only 2.1 hectares in December 2020 compared with 2.8 hectares the previous winter season. In Mexico, folk dancers paraded through the streets in elaborate costumes as part of a festive tradition that mocks Spanish conquistadors from colonial times. Known locally as chinelos, this dance reportedly dates back to the 19th century and sees locals imitate the elaborate dress and fair skin of Europeans at the time of Mexico's colonization. Although the dance is normally performed during carnival season in Mexico, this parade is a modern take of the custom for the capital in order to revive the tradition. Thousands lined the city's streets to catch a glimpse of the dancers, with different groups of performers coming from different delegations in Mexico City. Western Antarctica was plunged into momentary darkness during a dramatic total solar eclipse. The Earth's southernmost continent experiences continual daylight from mid-October until early April, but the eclipse brought a few minutes of total darkness. The only place that this total eclipse could be seen was Antarctica. The eclipse was partially visible from South Africa, Chile, New Zealand and Australia. It's Christmas time everywhere, but for Germany's Jeromin couple, Thomas and Suzanne Jeromin, there is another reason to celebrate. The Jeromin couple is already the German world record holders for most Christmas trees at their home in Rintel in the northwestern German state of Lower Saxony. For this year's 10th anniversary, the couple has ramped up and set up a total of 444 trees decorated head to toe with baubles and tinsel and lights. More than 10,000 Christmas balls and 300 strings of fairy lights are used in the display. Speed cubers from across the world went head-to-head at the virtual 2021 Red Bull Rubik's Cube World Cup final over the weekend, with American Max Park winning 2 golds and retaining his crown in the coveted speed cubing event. Park was crowned world champion in the speed cubing mixed event for the second year running. Another American, 16-year-old Tommy Cherry, won the title in the re-scramble event. Cherry's fastest solve in the final of 15.298 seconds also set a new record for the Rubik's Cube World Cup event. In the women's event, Frances Sebastian won the gold. The tournament, now in its 4th year, saw more than 6,000 entrants from in excess of 50 countries, whittled down to 32 of the fastest solvers. 2 tiaras believed to have belonged to French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte's first 5 Josephines sold for more than $760,000 at auction on Tuesday. Set with engraved gemstones, the early 19th century pieces are part of matching jewelry sets or perios and were offered as part of auction house Sotheby's Treasures sale. 1 tiara in gold and enamel and set with 25 carnelian intaglios sold for £450,600. The second gold and enamel tiara featuring 5 head cameos of Zeus, Dionysus, Medusa, Pan and Gaia of the ancient Greek mythology sold for £126,000. A mummy found in Peru and thought to be between 800 and 1200 years old is now on display at San Marcos University in Lima. In November, Peruvian archaeologists disclosed the finding of human remains in an underground tomb on the outskirts of Lima, surrounded by pots, ceramics, guards containing vegetable remains and stone tools. The pre-Incan mummy was in fetal position and tied with ropes, which was probably a local burial rite. GlobalScan Desk, DD India.
And now some action from the world of sports. Canada has become the latest nation to join the list of US, Australia, as well as the UK to announce a boycott of the Beijing Winter Olympics early next year, citing its poor human rights record in authoritarian regime in Beijing, China. But the International Olympic Committee's top boss, Thomas Bach, remains unperturbed, saying that participation of athletes is what really matters. The rest is politics.
After the United States, Australia and Britain, Canada has now decided to boycott the Beijing Olympics. All these countries have decided to diplomatically boycott the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing over its human rights concerns.
For the past many months, we've been in conversation with partners and allies around the world on the issue of the Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Games. As a country, indeed, as many partners around the world, We are extremely concerned by the repeated human rights violations by the Chinese government. That is why we are announcing today that we will not be sending any diplomatic representation to the Beijing Olympic or Paralympic Games this winter. Our athletes have been training for years and are looking forward to compete at the highest level against athletes from around the world, and they will continue to have all of our fullest support as they show the extraordinary success that Canada has at Winter Olympic Games.
The announcement came after the White House, the Australian government and the UK governments had confirmed diplomatic boycotts.
I don't think the decision by Canada or by many other countries to choose to not send diplomatic representation to the Beijing Olympics and Paralympics is going to come as a surprise to China. We have been very clear over the past many years of our deep concerns around human rights violations, and this is a continuation of us expressing our deep concerns for human rights violations.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson also announced the boycott earlier.
Mr. Speaker, it's clear from what I said earlier on that the government has no hesitation in raising these issues with China, as I did with President Xi the last time I talked to him, and there will be effectively a diplomatic boycott of the of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. No ministers are expected to attend. What I think the House and no officials, Mr. Speaker, but what I can tell the House is that I do not think that sporting boycotts are sensible, and that remains the policy of the government. As I've said before, we do not support sporting boycotts, but there are no plans for ministers, certainly no plans for ministers to attend the Winter Olympics.
The International Olympic Committee said on Wednesday it welcomed government support for their national Olympic teams for the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics, despite some countries announcing a diplomatic boycott over China's human rights record.
The integrity of the games are about the integrity of the sports competitions, and therefore, we have our full focus, on the athletes. The games are about and for the athletes, and therefore you will hear the same comment from us for every political decision from any government. We have been concerned with the athletes. We welcome that they can participate, that they are supported by their national governments, and the rest is politics, and our political neutrality, the principle is applied.
It all started after the United States announced on Monday its diplomatic boycott over what Washington termed China's genocide of Uyghur minorities in the Xinjiang region and other human rights abuses. GlobalScan Desk, DD India.
The BCCI announced India's squad for the upcoming tour to South Africa. As expected, Virat Kohli will lead the side, while Rohit Sharma has been named as the vice-captain for the 3-match test series from December 26th.
The selection of the Indian Test team for the South Africa tour was in fact the real test for the selectors, as it was one tough task. The task of leading the 18-member Indian team for the Test series was handed over to Virat Kohli, while Rohit Sharma was assigned the vice-captaincy for the Test, taking the role away from Ajinkya Rahane. This was, however, good for Rahane, as the team management maintained their faith in him, and he was given a place in the team for the South Africa tour. Ravindra Jadeja, Shubman Gill, Akshar Patel and Rahul Chahar have not been included in the team as they are currently injured and recovering. The 18-member Indian contingent for the South Africa tour is as follows: Virat Kohli captain, Rohit Sharma vice-captain, KL Rahul, Mayank Agarwal, Cheteshwar Pujara, Ajinkya Rahane, Shreyas Iyer, Hanuma Vihari, Rishabh Pant, Vridhiman Saha, R. Ashwin, Jayant Yadav, Ishant Sharma, Mohammad Shami, Umesh Yadav, Jasprit Bumrah, Shardul Thakur and Mohammad Siraj. Along with this, the BCCI has also replaced the captain for the ODIs. Rohit Sharma has now been handed over captaincy for the T20 as well as the ODI team. Under Rohit's captaincy, India had clean sweep the T20 series, beating New Zealand 3-0. Obviously, this flurry of change had begun from the time Virat stepped down as the captain of the T20, and it was only time before it received a formal stamp of approval, which it has now. Sports Desk, DD India.
Let's now find out what happened this week in history.
On December 6, 1917, the steamship Mont Blanc carrying benzol, picric acid and 5,000 tons of TNT collided with the steamship Emo at Halifax, Canada. The resulting explosion killed more than 1,500 people, injured 8,000 and destroyed a large part of the city. On December 6, 1973, Gerald Ford was sworn in as US Vice President after the resignation of Spiro Agnew over allegations of financial irregularities. On December 7, 1916, Herbert Asquith resigned as British Prime Minister. He was succeeded by David Lloyd George, the War Secretary, with a commitment to wage all-out war on Germany. On 7th of December in 1941, Japanese planes attacked the US Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, destroying several aircrafts and ships and precipitating the US declaration of war on Japan. On 8th of December in the year 1974, the Greeks in a referendum voted by a huge majority against restoring the monarchy. On 8th of December in 1978, Golda Meir, Israel's first woman prime minister, passed away. It was the 9th of December in the year 1608 when renowned English poet John Milton was born in Brett Street in London. He is well known for his poem Paradise Lost. In the year 1961, on the 9th of December, Tanganyika became independent within the Commonwealth with Julius Nyerere as Prime Minister. The following year, it became a republic. On the 10th of December 1996, President Nelson Mandela signed into law a new constitution for South Africa, legally entrenching racial equality and consigning apartheid to history's dustbin. On the 10th of December in 2002, former US President Jimmy Carter received the Nobel Peace Prize. GlobalScan Desk, DD India.
And with that, we conclude this edition of Global Scan. Till next time, namaskar.